Ann Ford grew up in a safe, comfortable world grounded in a long legacy of resourcefulness and hard work. Her great-great-grandfather, Henry Ford, started it all. Founder of Ford Motor Company and patriarch of the illustrious Ford family, he and his son's children built an empire that spans the globe and has flourished for over 115 years. This was the world that Ann Ford, second child of Henry Ford II, inhabited. A world where anything was possible, until it wasn't.
Welcome to My Healthy Mind. I'm Elizabeth Atkins. Children with learning disabilities face long-term struggles, but so do the folks who love them. Today we're talking with Ann Ford, author of several books about these struggles and the mother of Allegra Ford, Ann's adult child with severe learning disabilities. Ann, welcome to My Healthy Mind.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You're part of the storied and historic Ford family. Tell us what it was like growing up in the Ford family household.
Well, I know a lot of people think that it was different, but I don't think that I feel that I had any different life than most of my friends. And we had a very happy home. You know, we had dinner together every night, and my father came home about 7, and then we'd all be together. We did have a lot of security. That was the only thing that was sort of embarrassing, to have my friends over and have a lot of security around, but that was, you know, we were brought up that way. So, you know, we were sent away to a convent when we were 13 in Connecticut. So, you know, basically I was only there from age birth to 13. Then I went to a convent, then I went to college, and then I got married. So, but I come back to Detroit a lot.
And so you got married, and then what happened?
I got married, and then I had my first child in November. I got married December 27th, and I had Alessandro November 23rd. And we were a big, happy family, and everything was going great, and had Allegra. It was a perfectly normal birth. She was extremely good. There wasn't anything, she seemed like a perfectly normal baby. But there were some times when my sister or her husband picked up little clues about, you know, she's not eating by herself, she's not doing certain things by herself that other kids do, but I just brushed it off and went home and told her how to eat. So when she went back, she was fine. So.
And then at what point did you discover that she had learning disabilities?
She was in her 2nd year of nursery school. And the headmistress came to me and said, you know, Allegra's not really participating in the class. She doesn't sit with the teacher when the teacher reads. She's always off on her own in the kitchen, pretending to make dinner or food. She didn't play with anybody. So she came and she said to me, you know, I think there's something a little bit off here. And I want you to get her tested. And in the meantime, there's a school on the 6th floor of this building called the Gateway School where she would fit in perfectly, I think. So I said, all right, but I don't think I'm going to like it. And she said, well, just go and look at it because it's perfect for Allegra. I went down the elevator and I opened the door to the school and I thought I was going to pass out. It was the most horrible place I'd ever seen. And it was, the school was in a gymnasium, and there were little cubicles around the gym that had the classes. And that's where she had class. So I turned around and I left, crying my eyes out, thinking, I can't send my daughter here. But I finally realized that she was having problems. But then the worst thing happened because When I realized she had to go to a special school, I had to find that special school. And I went to about 7 different schools, and she was turned down by every single one of them. And I was left with, September was coming, and I had no place to send Allegra to school. They wouldn't take her. So I thought, well, I can't homeschool her because I'm not smart enough. And so it went on, and finally I got a phone call from the Gateway School. Somebody had dropped out and that there was a space for her that she could go, but only on condition. And this happened with every single school she went to, and she went to quite a few. She only would be taken on condition, and if she didn't do well, she was out.
And so you became accustomed to hearing she doesn't belong here every time you took her to a new school. Tell us about that moment when you were standing in the rain at the payphone.
That was the very last school I was waiting to hear from. I'd already heard from 5 or 6 by then. And I was standing on 72nd Street and Madison Avenue in a payphone, but not a covered payphone, an open payphone. And it was pouring with rain. And I dialed the school and I said, I'm calling about Allegra Uzielli. Do you have any word about whether she can come in September? And they said, I'm sorry, she wouldn't fit in here. So I hung up the phone and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I had no idea what to do. And so I went home, and maybe a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the Gateway School saying that somebody had dropped out and they would take Allegra, on condition that she can keep up, then she can stay. And she was able to keep up, and so it was 5 years. And if she didn't get through the first year, she would be asked to leave, but she stayed for 5 years, and she fit in perfectly. So as much as I didn't like the look of the school and the look of the kids in the school, it made her life wholesome. She had friends, which she didn't have, and these kids were all the same. So the Gateway worked out well. It was the best thing I ever did because she got her independence, and she really enjoyed it, and she made a ton of friends. In the long run, Gateway really saved her life. I mean, if they hadn't accepted her, I don't know where she'd be today. But I do know that after being there for just a couple of weeks, I saw a complete change in the way she behaved. She had friends, she was happy, and it didn't matter because they were just like her. That's what made me so happy. It always bothered me that I never did go and look at a public school because I had heard later on how great they do with special ed. So that I'm sad about. But she did fine wherever she went.
Stress, depression, and severe mental illness can happen to anyone. Team Wellness Center has been helping those struggling with these conditions in southeastern Michigan.
They get a chance to know that somebody's on their team.
We think nobody else feels the pain that we feel. We feel like I'm the only one. But that is so untrue.
Within 24 hours of reaching out to our team, members receive psychiatric evaluations and begin the necessary treatment for recovery.
Working through my problems and seeing that I'm not the only one that has to cope has really brought me to a place where now it's okay to talk about it.
Because if you keep stuff to yourself, you can't overcome. We all need one another.
Team Wellness Center. You are not alone.
So let's go back to when the first administrator of the school recommended that you have her evaluated.
All right, so she recommended I have her evaluated, and so I went around and asked everybody who they thought would be the best person to evaluate her, and they gave me the name of a pediatric neurologist at a New York hospital. And I called him, made an appointment, and we went. And he said, I'll test Allegra and then come back tomorrow or the next day. I'll call you and I'll give you the results of the test. So he called maybe the next day or the day after, I can't remember. And I went back, and Allegra was not in the room. She was out playing secretary with the secretary. And the doctor said to me, you have a mentally retarded young girl, and I think that it would be best to institutionalize her, and I recommend that she go to this place in London, England. And by the way, I'm too busy to take care of her. So I just blew up, walked out, grabbed Allegra by the hand and went home. I didn't pay the bill or anything. Went home and I said, Allegra, go into your room for a few minutes, and Mommy has to be by herself for a while. And I just went in the bathroom and cried. And but I didn't want to give up, and so I went around and found another pediatric neurologist who did test her, who did tell me that she had very severe learning disabilities.
A major irony in your story is that your father was one of the most powerful men on the planet, Henry Ford II. You had the resources to put your daughter wherever she needed to be, and yet you were still being told she can't come here. Can you talk about that?
He was terrific when I told him. It took me a long time to tell him, but when I did, he said, don't worry, Ann, you know, we're going to find a cure. And there's no cure. So, you know, he was a powerful man, and he did try his hardest, but unfortunately, there's no cure, and the name didn't matter to those schools, you know, who you were. So, you know, in a way, I think that's great. You know, they didn't take her because they might get a donation. They just didn't take her.
And you were a single mother, correct?
I was a single, divorced mother, yes.
And so did you have anybody to talk to? I mean, how were you feeling? Obviously crying in the bathroom, but how were you feeling as you were going through this initial stage,
Horrible.
realizing the severity of her learning disabilities?
Well, it was horrible, but the worst thing I did was I went into denial. You know, I just didn't want to accept anything. Not that I didn't do everything for Allegra, but I didn't want to discuss it with my family or friends. So I built this sort of secret garden where I would go, and the hedges were very high, so nobody could get in. And I spent many years that way, not wanting to talk about it. My father was too busy. My mother, I didn't want her telling her friends. My sister I did tell, but then eventually I became aware that I was doing the wrong thing, and I really had to accept it and accept what I got. But if somebody had come and said to me, Ann, you have a child that has a disability, but she's brought you such joy, and she's such a terrific girl, the disability is not going to go away. You have to live with this, but nobody did. So it was very hard those first. Not one of my friends had a child with a disability, nobody in my family, and I was alone. Well, I didn't know what to do. You know, I felt lost. And I think it was probably because I didn't talk to anybody. You know, I kept it all inside and didn't do any good. I mean, I should never have done that. But then I realized, well, I've been dealt a hand, and I'm going to make the best of it. And I will do everything I can to have this child have a happy life.
And you were taught to not show a lot of emotion,
That's
especially in public because of your family's position. So that must have made it more difficult.
Yeah, because I felt like I couldn't talk about it. And that's why I recommend that if any mother out there listening today would just listen to me and say, don't be in denial, talk to your family.
Let's go back to when you were first realizing the severity of her learning disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
It was at a time when you didn't even know what that term meant when you first heard it. And it was not a commonplace term. So Explain what that was like, the confusion, the anger perhaps. What were you feeling?
Well, there was confusion and there was anger, but I did my best to read up everything I could about it. We did go to a lot of doctors, so I would always go in and talk to them about what was going on. And so I eventually learned more about it because I had no knowledge of what learning disabilities were. And my son was fine. I mean, there was nothing wrong with him. So I thought maybe they made a mistake, you know, but I realized that that was not a mistake. So I had to deal with it. That's another thing I'd like to talk about too, is that her relationship to her brother and how I mishandled that. And I'm really very sorry I did it, but it's worked out fine. Instead of telling her brother what she actually had and what the problems were and take him to the doctor with me when we went, I just berated him and said, well, maybe you'd like to be her for one day and not have any friends and go to all these doctors. Would you rather do that? And he said no, or something like that. And I should have not done that. And then later on, I asked him, the National Center for Learning Disabilities, where I worked for 12 years, had a benefit every year. And this year I said to Alessandro, would you write something about being the brother of an LD sister? And he said, yes, of course I will. Well, I never saw the speech before he gave it, but I knew it would say, I have the best mother. She's so thoughtful. She's so giving. She takes care of my sister so well. He stood up at the benefit in front of 600 people and said, my mother has done a terrible job. And went on to say that, you know, parents should have a class to go to learn how to treat the other child, the sibling. And, you know, he got a standing ovation. And more parents and actually siblings came up to me and said, you just worked a miracle. I mean, I was devastated, but if it helped somebody, you know.
At Team Wellness Dental Clinics, you'll find plenty to smile about. Our friendly professional dentists and hygienists are here to give you the full range of preventative and remedial care you need for a beautiful, lasting smile. From diagnostics to routine cleanings, our team does it all, right in your neighborhood. So whether you come to us or we come to you, you'll get the kind of dental care you need to keep smiling. Team Wellness Dental Clinics, now serving communities all over Metro Detroit.
Welcome to My Healthy Mind.
A show that dares to talk about mental health matters that touch nearly every family. Each week you'll meet guests who share their stories, hear from local experts, and learn about resources that may help.
And so I was in a committee meeting at the House of Representatives when I realized that my daughter had autism.
We need to take the stigma away from mental health issues.
No topics about mental health and wellness are off limits on our show.
Let's talk about it on My Healthy Mind.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Today we're talking about learning disabilities with Ann Ford, daughter of Henry Ford II and mother of Allegra Ford, who has severe learning disabilities. Ann, we learned the struggles you went through in discovering Allegra's challenges and the sometimes frustrating attempts to find proper resources for her,
That's right.
which thankfully it appears you've done.
When she was younger, she took up figure skating. And she was very young, I would say maybe 10. And there was a little ice studio right near where we lived. So after a while, she could go by herself. And she never actually told anybody there that she had a learning disability. She didn't know her right from her left, so I wrote it on her fingertips. So when she performed, she would know which was right and which was left. But she went on to the Adult Nationals and pursued that for a long time. I still say I don't know whether it was the costumes that she liked or the skating that she liked. But, you know, that's another thing. You have to find the passion in the child, because if you can find the passion, it really helps. And that really made Allegra. Her self-esteem went sky high, and she was able to socialize better, and so she really enjoyed that. I taught her, you know, when we'd fly from LaGuardia to Cape Cod, I taught her to go up and tell the stewardess that I have a learning disability and you must help me. And she did. And she got a lot of help. Once she got stranded overnight in a snowstorm in Cincinnati. And she went up to the desk and she said, I have a learning disability and I don't know what to do. And so the man found her a physically disabled woman with 2 kids. And that woman took her in, took her to the hotel. They all spent the night together, and they remained friends forever.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Were you aware this was happening when it was?
Oh my God, I was on the phone. I never let her hang up. I talked to the man, I talked to the woman, but you know, she was going to sleep on the floor at the airport. And I just knew she couldn't handle that. But this woman was terrific, and they became best friends, and so everything seems to work out. Now, she's 46, and she works out every morning from 6 to 8, and then she has lunch with friends, and, you know, it's a perfectly normal life.
And she's married.
And she's married, yes. She got married 5 years ago. It was the happiest day of my life.
So in your book, Laughing Allegra, you wrote, I grew to accept that life is filled with uncertainty and that answers to the simplest yet profound questions, such as, what is wrong with my daughter, can be elusive. I had to learn to be self-reliant in ways I never had before. I learned that every spark of optimism and hope was something to be nurtured and treasured, because sometimes they were the only comfort available.
That's right. That's correct. It was. And every time there was something good or something wonderful happened, I believed. And it got me on to the next thing. So that's very true.
At Team Wellness Primary Care Center, you'll find all the basic services you need to be well and stay well. Come in for all your screenings. Come in for routine physicals and checkups. Come in for full-service dentistry. Come in for vaccinations and immunizations. At Team Wellness Primary Care Center, we take care of your total health. Team Wellness Primary Care Center. Come on in.
I've always dreamt of using my voice to make a difference, but what I didn't expect was that mental illness would get in my way. Living with bipolar disorder, there were so many times that I felt like I was alone. The hardest part was dealing with my bipolar depression. I finally hit rock bottom and decided to get help. Then slowly things started to change. For me, it takes speaking up, finding the right treatment plan, taking care of myself, and getting back to what I love. After finding the right healthcare professional and opening up to family and friends, I realized that bipolar disorder may be a part of my life, but it isn't who I am.
Go on and try to tear me down. I will be rising from the ground like a skyscraper.
Living well is possible. It is a process. Even though sometimes it seems like hard work, you're worth it. Visit BeVocalSpeakUp.com to learn how you can speak up for yourself and use your voice to make a difference.
And your experience with Allegra inspired you to become an advocate for children with learning disabilities.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you tell us what you did?
Yes, when Allegra went away to school and I was left alone and I didn't want to give up on learning disabilities, I really wanted to go out and help mothers that maybe were going through the same thing I've been going through. So I started the National Center for Learning Disabilities in New York, and that is an organization that does exactly that. helps parents. We have a benefit every year. We raise money. We do a lot of work in Washington. We have a woman that's there all the time looking at public policy. And I stayed there for, I think, 11 or 12 years. And then I didn't want to give up the issue again. So I asked John Thompson, my co-author, to come with me because I wanted to write a book about my daughter. And John knows my daughter very, very well, knows my son too very well. And he agreed to do that. So we said, okay, we'll do one book. Well, we just finished our 5th.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I do for advocacy, because I think, you know, I think people like my books. I think they touch them. And because it was very difficult in the beginning, because I didn't want to say a lot. First of all, I was worried that I might hurt Allegra. And secondly, it was just getting into my inner side that they were, you know, making me talk about something I didn't want to talk about. But then, as John said to me, you know, if you don't tell the story correctly, you're not going to help anybody.
So in doing so, what is your advice and encouragement for other mothers who have children with learning disabilities?
Well, I have 3 words that I like to use: resilience, acceptance, and probably most important, unconditional love. Those are the 3. And if you can understand those 3 words, you'll be a terrific mother.
So what does resilience mean to you?
Resilience to me means that you're able to cope with the world. You're able to go out and do things on your own and be resilient. Acceptance is take what you have and work the best with it. And unconditional love is, you know what that is. You know, a lot of my friends say, how did you go through this? And I looked at them and I said, that's my daughter you're talking about. I can go through anything with her. I don't need to have, you know, her being in the best school and going to the best college. She's my daughter and I love her unconditionally, yeah.
Thanks, Anne. We appreciate the work that you're doing, and we wish you and Allegra a bright and happy future.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching today and for sharing with us this powerful, inspiring story of one mother's struggle to help her daughter overcome learning disabilities. If you'd like to read or talk about this or any mental health issue, please reach out to us on our website, myhealthymind.com, on Twitter at myhealthymind, or on Facebook. We'll see you next week for another edition of My Healthy Mind. Let's talk about it.